sporting the NASA mug this morning. So today I thought we'd talk a little bit about Enneagrams. I love Enneagrams. I've recently become obsessed with following different pages on Instagram that tell me more about like the Enneagram types and all of that stuff. So I figured I'd do a video on it today for those of you that don't know what Enneagrams are, and just kind of going over like a lot of the random stuff that I've learned about the different types of Enneagrams. So yeah, let's get into it. So if you have never heard of an Enneagram, it is a personality test like I just said, but basically it groups you into one of the 9 personalities and kind of tells you more about yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, how you view the world, all that different kind of things. What you have to do is take a test and you get a statement, and then you have to rate it as accurate, neutral, or inaccurate. And I literally just took the test again just to make sure I was indeed the type that I originally tested as, which I believe I am, but I did stay the same type, and if you continue listening you will find out which type that I am. So if you haven't taken the personality test yet, I highly recommend to go do that right now. I will put a link in the description of this video. Go take the test right now, but if you already know your personality type or you just finished the test, keep on listening because I'm about to go through all the different types and like highs, lows, mediums, everything about them, you know? So type 1 is known as the reformer. So these type of people are very well organized. They're very much so perfectionists. They have a very ethical sense of like right and wrong in their brain. Like they know what's right and what's wrong, and it's very clear to them what is right and what's wrong. They have very high standards for the people around them and themselves, but often this can involve them slipping into that perfectionism mindset and being very critical of others, and especially when others are doing what they perceive as wrong. Type 1s have a lot of issues with control. I think there are probably several type 1s that struggle with eating and eating disorders and struggling to maintain control of certain things in their lives because of that perfectionism mindset, I guess. But my biggest advice I would give to any type 1s out there is to take time for yourself and relax. The world will not fall apart if you take your foot off the gas for a couple seconds just to recharge yourself. I just think type 1s can get a little too in their heads sometimes and just need take a break. Just take a break, please. Please take a break. Okay, thanks. Some famous examples of type 1s are Plato and Confucius, which are, I think you could definitely tell that they would be type 1s. I mean, they are definitely like in that mindset of like ethics and what is right and what is wrong. So if you are type 2, then you are the helper. So the helper is very much so warm, kind-hearted, generous, giving, literally a lot of really good things. Like, I wish I was a type 2 because there's not a lot of bad things about them. But I will say that the negative side of the type 2 is that they can slip into a people-pleasing mindset, as well as, I don't know how to say this perfectly, but sometimes their motives are not as pure as you would think that they are. Not in a bad way, but they can do things for others in order to make themselves feel needed. So it's not as pure as you would think. So their basic fear is that they will be unloved, which is why I think that they are so generous and giving. And this might be even like a subconscious thing. Like they don't even know that this is their basic fear, but honestly, a lot of the things they do is so that other people will like them or love them, or they will get the love that they give back. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because honestly a lot of us in this world love to be loved, you know what I mean? I really think this is what a lot of the driving force behind the type 2 is, this fear of not being loved and giving out copious amounts of love in order to feel loved. So when type 2s are in this healthy sort of balanced state, I think that they are literally like, people are drawn to type 2s like bees are drawn to honey. Like, type 2s are the sweetest kind, I swear. But if the type 2 is like slightly out of balance or very out of balance, They have this dark side which a lot of people don't recognize, and type 2s themselves might not even recognize, and this is like they're very prideful, self-serving, manipulative almost. They can definitely manipulate the people around them, and sometimes it's not even like they can't even sense it, but when they fall out of balance, this can definitely happen to type 2s. Honestly, type 2s worry a lot about what other people think about them, and once again, not a bad thing. A lot of people and a lot of types of people worry about what people think about them, but this is like a very deep anxiety for type 2s, is the thought of people not liking them and they don't know the reason why they don't like them. It's like a very deep thing for type 2s. But like I said, when type 2s are in balance, people are drawn to them like bees to honey. They are the sweetest kind of people. They are so generous and giving and kind, and I definitely think that type 2s are like the best kind of kinds. Like, are they not? But like the first one, I will give 2 examples of 2 people that we know to be type 2s. 2 people that I found that are famous are Eleanor Roosevelt and Stevie Wonder. So like I said, very kind, giving, generous people. So type 3s are the achievers. They are very driven by their achievements, their goal setting, reaching their goals, and then finding a new goal. So they are very self-assured. They are charming and energetic and super, super ambitious. They often can get caught up a little bit in the thought of what other people think of them, but honestly, who doesn't get caught up in that? So not a huge downside for the type 3s, the achievers. So when they're healthy and balanced, I say that type 3s are ambitious and inspiring people, like the stars of the world, the people who are the most giving, the most reaching for more. That's what I think of when I think of the achievers. They can't stop doing what they're doing. They are going hard, they are going at it, and I will say that one of the side effects of being a type 3 is that you are most likely a workaholic. You get caught up in whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're setting goals for. You get so caught up in it that you overwork to the point where you can even like overwork to the point where your physical health is involved, and it's not a good thing. So some famous type 3s that I can think of, the first one is one that I thought of myself. This is how I originally heard about the Enneagram test, and that is Rachel Hollis. She has a book. She has many books, actually. She has a podcast. She has a bunch of stuff that you can look into, but so inspiring, and definitely embodies what it is to be a type 3. And then another really famous type 3 is Muhammad Ali. Obviously very driven for his goals as well. I think being an achiever is just having your goals and then literally doing anything that it takes to get to them, even if it means drinking copious amounts of coffee or working until you literally are like falling asleep because your body can't handle it anymore. So if you're type 3, I would take a second and evaluate yourself, evaluate your goals and your lifestyle and everything, and just think if you need to ever take a small break, because honestly you probably do if you're type 3. So type 4 is the individualist. It is generally a person who's very quiet and reserved. This type can honestly be very like self-indulgent, very melancholy, very down on themselves and self-pityful, and they can really struggle. But honestly, if you are a very, very balanced type 4, you are so inspired and artistic and creative, and you have so much to offer when you're in balance. So you might be wondering at this point why they're called individualist. So they're called individualists because they see themselves as functionally different than other people. If that makes sense. They're acutely aware of the different positive things about themselves that make them different from other people, as well as any sort of like negative thing about themselves that makes them different from other people. A healthy type 4 individualist will be able to look at themselves clearly, like looking into a mirror and seeing all the good things about themselves, all the bad things about themselves, their flaws, their great things about them, all of it. These type of people honestly are so strong. They can endure the greatest kinds of pain with like a quiet strength about themselves, if that makes sense. But they often feel like something in their life is missing, and if a type 4 is out of balance for long enough, they will spend most of their life just searching for that thing that they feel is missing in their life. And honestly, a lot of type 4s have a very negative self-image and very low self-esteem, which is also very unfortunate. So two of the more famous type 4s that I wrote down are Anne Frank and Edgar Allan Poe, both of which lived hard lives and lived in hard times. But also two people who had a quiet strength about them. Edgar Allan Poe was a very famous poet, and he wrote kind of like more dark poetry. I think he felt like he was very misunderstood for most of his life, so it makes a lot of sense why he was a type 4. My biggest advice for a type 4 is to let go of those things that are holding you back, those negative feelings, those grudges that I know you have been holding. Just let go of them, because honestly, it will help you so much. You are so creative and artistic and beautiful, and you need to let it go, baby. You need to let it go. Alright, now it's time for my type. I am a type 5, which is the investigator. So I wrote all of these things down in my bullet journal if I haven't mentioned it yet, so I'm just going to read off. I just kind of listed a bunch of things about type 5s. So I wrote intense cerebral type. They are perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. Type 5s can definitely become easily preoccupied with their thoughts and get lost in them and get lost in their imagination and just looking into the future and goals and all that stuff. For me, it's not so much that I get lost in things that I want to invent or deep questions about the world. It's more like I get lost in the idea of what the future could hold or what the past has held. Does that make sense? For type 5s, learning is extremely important. Learning for a type 5 is like sunshine every single day. If you don't have sunshine every single day, you will be depressed AF. Learning is so important to me. I literally feel like I have to learn something every single day or I am bored with life and I don't like it. Type 5s spend a lot of time observing, contemplating, thinking about stuff, and type 5s are really drawn to the unknown. Like anything that isn't answered, very drawn to. The path less traveled by. If they're gonna go on a trip, it's likely that they won't go to somewhere that is like super famous. They would rather go to somewhere that's kind of like off the beaten path. Just the unknown or the thought that something might be out there that the answer is not there yet is very enticing to a type 5. And honestly, type 5s are so willing to immerse themselves in their thoughts or their observations, all that stuff. They're so willing to that they will literally socially isolate themselves and not care that they are socially isolating themselves to do so. And I know this from personal experience because I am willing to socially isolate myself in order to just write in my notebook for hours or draw on a piece of paper for hours or just think about what my goals are, what I want to do with my life, and blah blah, not realizing that life is literally passing me by, but I'm not in it because I'm isolating myself to think about what life could be like. The biggest challenge to type 5s is to do it all, but not in the way that I just said that. Yes, it's great to be imaginative and thoughtful and think all these great thoughts, but you also have to maintain your relationships. You have to maintain your social life so that you don't become like depressed because you're so withdrawn. You need to make sure you feed yourself and get enough sleep, because honestly, one of the worst things about being a type 5 from experience is that I have really poor eating habits and sleeping habits. I will literally lose sleep to do something I'm passionate about and just think about stuff all night. And I kid you not, because I've done it in the past for hours and days on end, and I don't care. Because that's what it is to be a type 5, because you're just like lost in it and you forget, like, oh, when's the last time I ate? Yesterday at dinner? Oh, it's already dinner time today. Like, stuff like that just escapes you, which is crazy, but it kind of just is how it is. Famous type 5s that I wrote down are Buddha and Albert Einstein, both crazy imaginative in their fields themselves, they get lost in the sauce, if you know what I mean. Yeah, just food for thought, I guess. So the next type is type 6, which is the loyalist. The loyalist is obviously loyal. So type 6 is the loyalist. This person is committed, they are security oriented, they have a lot of anxiety, to be honest. Let me see, they are responsible and also can be a little suspicious of things at times. But overall, a type 6 is very reliable and a very trustworthy person. So a type 6 is very great at troubleshooting any sort of problems that run into their path. They can handle a lot of stress and really let it build up. They can run on stress for a very long time, and honestly, they'll run on stress and then they'll complain about it at the same time. They'll be like, ugh, I'm so stressed. But then stress will also be like kind of like a motivator for them, which is kind of like a double-edged sword if you ask me. But 6's greatest want in life is security and feeling like others have their back or others are there for them and support them, all that stuff. They're very loyal to those around them, their families, their loved ones, all those things. They're very loyal to them, but they also are very loyal to their own beliefs and the ideas that they have, and they will go down with their own ship, if that makes sense. If somebody doesn't believe what they will believe, they will go down with the ship for their beliefs. So this type is actually primarily based in the thinking center of all of the types. So this is why I read this on the Enneagram Institute website. They actually struggle with their inner voice that kind of helps them guide their life, like their inner guidance, which is why a lot of type 6 actually have self-confidence issues or issues with the way that they see themselves, their self-image, all that kind of thing. And their anxiety is really a struggle for them, to be honest. They often try to combat their anxiety by building up some sort of like security blanket, like a wall of security. Like, does that make sense? They build a wall around themselves for security purposes, but in reality, if they tried to figure out why their anxieties were the way that they are, or if they worked on their anxieties, they worked on trying to better themselves and not just like cover it up with a wall of like people that will protect them, and you know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? But they would be better off facing themselves and why they're anxious than trying to find security in others, because it's better to fix the inner problem than just work on making an outer protection wall. So now for type 7, which is known as the enthusiast. So this person is super extroverted, spontaneous, all over the place, very, very like busy in variety seeking, if that makes sense. This type of person can also be very impatient and impulsive. Kind of makes sense because they're kind of very much so like all over the place. This person's greatest wants in life is to not have FOMO because they are scared of missing out on any sort of experience that could enhance their life. Another thing that's really important to this person is maintaining their happiness and their freedom. If this person feels like they're in a box, it's like the worst thing in the world. And I think half the reason why this person is all over the place is because it's almost like they're doing so much to run away from their own pain and their own suffering. They don't want to stop for a minute in order to feel what they feel inside. So this person can also be very impatient and impulsive as a side effect of just being kind of all over the place, which is not a bad thing. It's just the way they decide to live their lives, you know? Two examples of this type of person are Benjamin Franklin and Amelia Earhart, both of which are described as very on-the-fly type of people, which makes so much sense with this type. Type 7s honestly have a certain level of anxiety, which is also associated with a bunch of other types. Their anxiety is mostly based on the thought that they don't know if they're doing the right thing. They don't know if their decisions are the right decisions. They don't know, they don't have that self-confidence in themselves to know if they're doing the right thing at all times. And they deal with their anxiety about not knowing if they're doing the right thing or acting the right way or saying the right thing by being even more all over the place, by going out and doing stuff more, by attending more events, by doing more things. That's how they kind of deal with their anxiety about not doing the right thing, or saying the right thing, or being the right thing. These types are constantly in the pursuit of freedom and happiness. Like I said, this is their bread and butter. This is what they need to survive. And honestly, they can pursue this freedom and happiness to the point where it destroys everything around them, which is really sad, and I hope it doesn't happen to any of my type 7s out here. But they will prefer and want their freedom and happiness more than they will their relationships or their finances, things like that. They will not even realize how much they have let go of to pursue their freedom and happiness until it's too late. But on the bright side, type 7s are once again one of the best kinds of people. They are a light in this world. They honestly, I feel like they see so much joy in the world that some of the other types just can't see. They're so optimistic and extroverted, and they push us to do things that we would never do normally, especially as a type 5 who just wants to be socially not all there. But you know what I mean. These types of people really bring their own kind of light to the world. So type 8 is the challenger, and the challenger is strong, assertive, a man's man, or a woman's woman. They can be very, very egocentric and very, very dominating, and those two aren't necessarily a bad thing, but they definitely have a very dominant personality type and are very strong-willed people. So the basic desire of a type 8 is to protect themselves, but also be very self-reliant. They don't want to have to depend on other people. They want to know that they have their own back, and that's all they need. So some of the things I've said so far about type 8 might sound like literally like a dictator, but honestly these people are some of the most charismatic people. They are some of the greatest leaders of like ever. People love to follow these people because they're so charismatic and just real leaders. They're strong and they know what they want and they know what their values are and they know how to get the job done. And that's why some of the examples that I found were Martin Luther King Jr. and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, both great leaders in their own respect, great leaders of different things. But these people were people that were so charismatic and loved by the people who followed them. So type 8s are very independent and self-reliant, and they, like I said before, they have their own back, but often it's kind of funny because, so let's say you're a type 8 and you own a company. So type 8s like to believe that they have their own back and they have all these other people underneath them, so that's all they need because they have their own back. But really, they are relying so much on these other people just as well to help build their company, and they don't even realize sometimes that they aren't as self-reliant as they think. But that's all I gotta say about type 8s. So type 9 is the last type, and this is the peacemaker. So these type of people are so easygoing, they're receptive, they're peacemakers, and they just want to keep the peace, which is why they're called the peacemakers. They're accepting, they're stable, they avoid conflict like it's literally the plague. However you say it, I say plague, but you probably say plague. Like the plague. But they literally avoid conflict at all costs. They do not want conflict, they just want to keep the peace the way it is. And I would say probably the worst thing about this type is not even to do with other people or reflecting on other people. I just think that these people can kind of overgive themselves to the point where they are literally self-neglecting, or they are not valuing their own beliefs or wants or needs, and that can be really detrimental. Especially like, let's say a type 9 is in a relationship, they won't tell their partner when something is wrong or when something doesn't feel right or whatever, because they don't want that conflict to start and they just can't deal with it. Some famous examples of this type 9 are Abraham Lincoln and Walt Disney. And the last thing I'm going to say about type 9s is just don't be a wallflower. I know it's hard to be in conflict with others, but it's worth it for both parties to be happy rather than just this side of you being cut out, if that makes sense. So yeah, that is today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you guys like this type of video. I'm considering of making one for the Myers-Briggs personality test, the 16 personalities. If I end up doing that, I'll let you guys know. But if you haven't yet, click that subscribe button. I thank you so much for watching to this point in the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!